Kyle, and welcome to episode 2 of COVID Comfort. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite films, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2.
13 years ago, audiences across America were horrified by the brutality of a faceless killer. Now, after more than a decade of silence, he has come out of hiding. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, directed by Tobe Hooper. Starts Friday, August 22nd at theaters everywhere.
Now, this film gets a lot of flack because it's not the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is understandable because that's perhaps the most visceral and insane horror movie ever made. Although it does not show nearly anything. It's just a textbook example of excellent filmmaking, in which case your perception of what you've seen and experienced is not what you actually saw. Now, this film comes over a decade later in Tobe Hooper's career, and in this case, they chose to emphasize the humor, although there is a decent amount of gore and some great scares in there. It's also the funniest fucking movie ever. It's hilarious. I love it. It's totally batshit crazy. It might be the most Tobe Hooper movie ever, really, even more than the original, because it just has his insane sense of humor to 11. So I originally had this film, I must have bought it at some point, like early in high school on VHS. And I remember it being like terrifying, especially because of Bill Moseley as Chop Top, who, by the way, like, this is undeniably one of the best film debuts ever. He's never going to get the credit really outside of like the genre community for that, but honestly, I mean, it's an unbelievable performance for someone who's doing their first film. Before this, he had only done, I think he had acted before, maybe, in plays and stuff, but he had done this short film called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the original film had, like, fucked him up so much that he had to make this little short comedy film about it. And that had got to Tobe Hooper through a friend of a friend or something, and he had said, "Oh, hey, if we make a sequel or something, like, I'll put you in the film." And at that time, there was no like plans to make a sequel whatsoever. So it was just, oh, that's cool that he saw it. But he is absolutely terrifying in this movie, and hilarious at the same. Sometimes from one moment to the next, which is a really difficult thing to pull off. It's very impressive.
What about Iron Butterfly? Like In a Vida de Gata, baby. Oh, it's heavy. I've never been to a radio station before. Do you think you could do me a tour, huh?
Tour? Sure. Sure. But seriously quick. And it ends at the exit sign.
So, like I was saying, I had this film in high school on VHS, and I just thought it was like weird, fucked up, and scary, and that was kind of it. And definitely not the original. So I kind of wrote it off, and then just a couple years ago, like the summer after Tobe Hooper passed away, there was the Chicago Film Society did a screening of this film. And it was sometime near Halloween or something like that. So I decided that, yeah, I'll go. I haven't seen it in a long time. See it on the big screen in 35 millimeter. And the guy who presented it obviously held it in pretty high regard, kind of spoke on its behalf. So watched the film again with an audience in a theater. I hadn't seen it in years. And I just didn't realize how fucking hilarious it was, but also how, to the credit of that, how well written it was, how funny it was, and how well made it was. I mean, especially seeing it on the big screen, you can see the craftsmanship of the filmmaking, the lighting, the camera work, the special effects, which Tom Savini did all the effects for this, and the effects are fucking amazing. There's a saw going through a guy's head, which is like how you kind of start the movie, and it just gets gorier and gorier from there. But just the insane sense of humor. Like, it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier, but also funnier and funnier and funnier. It's just one of those movies that's clearly it's just unrestrained, which is exciting because, obviously so many movies and so many things are so put in a think tank. They're so thought through, and I don't mean that this is not thought through, but I just mean they're so calculated, and they are, so engineered to not rub anyone the wrong way and not do this or that someone might not like. So it's a joy to watch things that have the guts to just be art and do whatever they want to do. So Bill Moseley is amazing in this movie. Dennis Hopper has some of the best stuff in this movie too, which is sad because he regards it as like one of his worst films, which it's not even close. He is so goddamn good in this movie. He wields dual mini chainsaws. He goes to kill the family, and he has 3 chainsaws, like a gunslinger with chainsaws. He has some of the best lines in the movie.
I'm the Lord of the Harvest.
It's the devil's playground.
Take it all out! Bring it all out! Bury the devil!
The other great performance, who was great in the original as well, Jim Siedow, as the cook, is fucking... He is so funny in this movie. He has my favorite lines.
This year, Drayton, you've got to tell the secret of that fabulously tasty chili.
No secret. It's the meat. Don't skimp on the meat. Damn property taxes fuck up everything. Fall business rent gets it in the ass every time. You got one choice, boy. Sex or the saw. Sex is, well, nobody knows. But the saw is family.
He is fucking hilarious. And it's just such a bonkers movie. I love it because it's I think it was mistaken for being what it was parodying and satirizing. Essentially was just kind of the excess of the 80s horror genre. And the first film is the first wave of really shocking horror films in the 70s. And arguably, I mean, the first film has really never been equaled. But the first film is like an amazing art film. It works on so many levels. I mean, it works as just whatever you want it to be. If you just want a horror movie, that's what it is. And it delivers in spades in a way that, without going for shock value, although it is shocking, which is incredibly hard to do, without showing you anything near what you think it has, and just being so masterfully done and tight and quick and knowing when to end. And but this is, almost 13 years later, and by then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, amongst other great horror films of the earlier period, have been ripped off a million times. And not that this is a bad thing, because I enjoyed tons of slasher movies, but obviously by that point in like 1985, 86, makeup effects have taken center stage, and it's all about more and more and more and more graphic, gory effects. And how can we like top ourselves with the next best kill over and over again. And they just take this and go, okay, let's just take that till the wheels fall off. Let's go even crazier. Let's go bigger. Let's go bloodier. Let's have the craziest effects possible, but also the humor. And this, just the script by L.M. Kit Carson is such a scathing attack on 80s yuppieism. I actually have read an earlier draft of the script with a different ending and a different opening, but it actually has an opening where there's a series of commercials and advertisements that are extremely 80s about greed and health food and different exercise crazes of the time. And each one starts and then like a chainsaw cuts through it. And this obviously, I don't know if they ever even filmed that. Probably not. That's like an earlier draft, I'm sure. But that would have underlined what this is about. And of course, that didn't end up in the film. And that's kind of honestly, it's spoon feeding the audience, but that's what some people need to grasp kind of the difference between something like this and maybe just the average slasher of that era. So it would have really underlined the satire and the parody that's actually going on here. But nonetheless, it's it's just scathingly, brutally insane satire. Because you have this cannibal family, the Sawyers, from the original film, who were just mad, crazy cannibals deep in the bowels of Texas in the original film. And ending up broke down near their house. That's that film. This film is, all right, what happens if that family is still around in the 80s and they're still cannibals and they're still killing whoever, comes their way or going out now and getting victims, and they're processing the meat into chili and barbecue, and they have like an award-winning business. In the film, I mean, they win a chili competition. And it just, I mean, that is the greed and the yuppieism of the 80s to a T. And I mean, it's still really, honestly, it's becoming relevant to today in that respect. But that's what it's all about. I mean, it's just taking that to the extreme and showing kind of the bipolar insanity of that level of greed. Obviously, it's hard for some people to see that when it's portrayed by these insane characters, but I don't know, that's the beauty of it. It's insane. It's also got a great score and some great 80s songs to go along with it. And I mean, obviously I'm neglecting Caroline Williams as the DJ Stretch. She's amazing in it too. I believe it was her first film, but her performance is incredibly intense and balances, I think, the film out and makes the horror half of it grounded and believable because she's genuinely terrified. But it just, on top of that, I mean, if that weren't enough, the lighting and cinematography is just delicious. I love it. It's the majority of the film ends up taking place in this kind of underground layer underneath this abandoned amusement park where this family lives. And they actually built it in an old print shop in Austin. That's where they shot most of the film. So they had this whole empty printing place to use as a set to build all these sets into, which is insane if you see the film, because it's this multi-leveled underground layer. But everything in there, almost the entire second half of that film is lit practically. So it's just all these insane string lights and different colored lights that they built into the production design of the set. And there's a sequence where Stretch is getting chased through this tunnel. And they were just following her in a long shot, getting chased for several minutes and probably several hundred feet, where they have to figure out how, I mean, they lit that in that way. There was nowhere to hide lights, so you had to make the lights part of the set because you were going to see them, because the camera was just moving right toward them. It's just amazing work, and I just love the aesthetic personally. It works on multiple levels, in my opinion. If you want to just go see like a popcorn horror movie, like a crazy, bloody popcorn horror movie, there you go. And obviously, if you want to look deeper, there's tons of satire on the genre and on the time that was made, and tons of exceptional craftsmanship, I think. And to me, it really shows a lot of skill on Tobe Hooper's part that I don't think he ever got credit for. Like I said, I think this film was totally overshadowed by the original. And I think, his whole career ended up that way, sadly, where people just thought every film subsequent wasn't the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and assumed that that was his goal every time out, and just assumed that he continually failed, essentially, which isn't true at all. You can see seeds of this humor in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, especially if you've seen it several times. There's several hilarious lines in there. Jim Siedow, again, when he kidnaps Marilyn Burns towards the end of the original film and leaves the gas station where he's going to take her back to the house where she just escaped from. He takes her, he has her tied up, he takes her, puts her in his truck, starts to drive away, forgets that he left the light on in his gas station, gets out, goes and shuts the light off, comes back in the truck, and says something about, the cost of electricity is enough to put a man out of business. This is this is 15 minutes before the end of, a film that has already scared the bejesus out of people and is incredibly terrifying, and you have a joke like that. And it makes sense that people would miss it because they're so invested in the terror of it, but it's there, and it's not an accident. And I don't think that this film is an accident. I think it's a great kind of showpiece for his sense of humor, but it also shows his technical skill because it's still scary. Incredibly well shot. It's an incredible piece of cinema that is hilarious and terrifying and, satirizing all at once. I love it. I think, it's always ripe for a reappraisal for a lot of people. So I actually have the Shout Factory Blu-ray, which is pretty nice. There's a lot of great special features on here. A whole documentary about the making of the film and a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff and interviews and audio commentaries and all that stuff. There's also a great-looking Blu-ray by Arrow, which I have thought about buying, which tells you how much I love this film, hence the shirt, which I actually got when I was visiting Austin. But I've thought about getting that one too. There's only a couple different special features. What can I say? I've actually painted a version of, I'll add a clip. I painted a picture of the Japanese poster of this film, which I think is awesome and I wanted to buy, but I couldn't afford it, so I painted my own version of it. Yeah, I think what's great about it, though, really, to sum up, is that combination. That's what I love about horror films, is that ability to have something deeper, have some bedrock of a message or a meaning, if you want to put it in there. And it's all the more subversive that it's in there beneath this, what is considered trash by kind of mainstream society. Obviously not necessarily anymore, but certainly at that time. And that's what great art is. I mean, you look at the really great pieces of art from today's perspective, anything that's in the past, and most of it was, branded pornography, branded, too violent or too sexual or too this or too that, too transgressive in that time. And that's what's great about it. It was ahead of its time. It was ahead of the curve. You look at it now and go, yeah, duh, that's great. It's one of the greatest movies. But you can easily find old footage of people picketing this or that film or saying how awful it is and how, offensive it is. And that's the exciting place to be, I think, with art. That's where you want to be. You want to be right on the edge, saying the things that people don't want you to say in polite society, of course. That's the whole point. That's what art can do. Art is where you can leave society behind and get to things without worrying about offending someone or worrying about losing someone's investment, which is all the more prevalent today with what's going on, especially. But like I said, Works has great escapist entertainment. There's also a lot of craftsmanship and art within it, if you so choose to find it. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, I would say watch it again, give it another look, and really just sit down and watch it, turn off everything else and give it your full attention, and I think you'd be surprised about what you find in there. So yeah, I mean, I think I have gone far enough talking about this film. I could go on and on. I love it to death. I wish some of the other sequels had maybe gone in this direction, because to me, I mean, I still need to probably give each one of those a second chance, but for me, this and the first one are the only Texas Chainsaw movies, basically. So yeah, that is episode 2 of COVID Comfort. Next week, I believe I will be talking about another Tobe Hooper film. Yeah, I go there a lot for comfort. We're going to just go down this rabbit hole. So next week, we're going to be talking about The Funhouse. Alright, this is Kyle signing off. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow us on iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. It helps us out a lot. Alright, take care.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is produced by Josh Lee, Craig Dram, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Audio editing by Kyle Hintz.